Okay. Oh, by the way, one thing I want to ask about in general is, right, I've got sort of the wrap-up topic here. We're coming towards the end of our time anyway, so I thought this was like a good open-ended topic. You both give me your thoughts on it, but I'll start with you, MCE. Right, one of the things I'm already looking to, because I've been in this industry long enough to know these things, right, is I remember as soon as I even started watching Valorant being like, ooh, this circuit seems a bit small for how many people want to be in Valorant, though. Like, wait a minute, it's for all the regions in the world as well. Like, I think that is about to get, as far as I can tell, every VCT season or whatever stage, rather, it's going to get worse and worse in the sense that, like, if people don't get it, it's like the game musical chairs. You have 40 people trying to get in like 8 chairs. Like, this isn't going to, just for NA alone, this is not going to work. Like, think about this, MCE, right? Even just trying to have a talk show, right? I've done all these episodes at the beginning of this talk show when it launched only a few months ago that are about like version 1 or like, what about these? Like, they're not even in VCT now. Like, these people can go from like they're a contender to make it to the LAN to like they're not even in it for 3 to 6 months. Like, fuck. Like, to me, if you're a fan trying to follow, the whiplash is crazy. If you're actually someone trying to be in the industry, though, like, it feels like there must be the amount of pressure on certain matches that aren't even the matches when you get to the LAN. Feeling like essentially some of the Open qualifier matches are the most important matches of the year for some of these teams. It seems like there must be a very interesting circumstance to be in. Like, what's your vibe in this sense? Because I get the vibe if you hear the talk about the franchise and stuff and look at who's getting teams. Like, you notice this last VCT one was where a lot more orgs really started to put the pedal down to the floor more on bigger names, sign the squad. It feels like everything's going to a fever pitch, dude. And like I say with the musical chairs analogy, a lot of people are going to be left like missing out when this thing ends, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think people had unrealistic expectations of like what was going to happen in terms of orgs being irresponsible and different things like that. Because like my idea of what was going to happen is I always, from the beginning of the time, was looking at LEC, LCK, like LCS, 10 to 12 teams, something like that. That was my expectation. So it's like we need to be inside this top 8 to have a chance at, getting a chance, because we can't be a borderline team because, your T1s of the world, your TSMs, like all these huge names are going to get those spots, I feel like. And Then they came out and they're like, oh, by the way, like 4, 6, and everyone's like, wait, what? And like, that's fair because that reaction is warranted, but like a lot of these teams that were like 20th ranked teams, 25th ranked teams, it's like, what did you honestly expect was going to happen? Like, you can't let, everybody into a franchise league or whatever. I hope the ecosystem they have plans for in terms of a, challenger league or like academy leagues, or like, I really hope there's another plan on top of this. And I hope that they're listening to some of the feedback, because I think this is a very big, like, fork in the road of how the game's going to go. Depending on what happens in the next 6 months or whatever it happens, I think you're going to see either a lot of successful things, or you're potentially going to see like a pretty drastic turnaround of how your game's ecosystem is working. But yeah, pressure wise, there's definitely pressure. You want to be one of the top teams because like, we're a new org, we're a new team, whatever. Like, if we're not one of those, what else do we have? Like, we offer content. We probably do the best content of any of the teams out there right now. And we've put in the work to try to do these little things well. But it's like, at the end of the day, it's like, God knows how much money TSM has spent on the LCS and things like that, that like, are they really going to choose us even if we have a better team, we have better content, we have all these better things? So like, yeah, there's definitely uncertainty and it's worrying, but you can't think about it. We have too much shit going on. Like, we're trying to qualify to Copenhagen. We have to win our match this week to make playoffs. Like, there's so much going on that like, you just kind of try to ignore it and like push it back down, and like, you're like just hoping it works out. But a lot of these people have, fever dreams of grandeur, that it's like, no, you never had a chance, you'll never have a chance. But like, you have to get yourselves in a position to do that, and all these top teams did it. Like, they cut storied players, huge name players, and they're like, no, this isn't going to work, we can't do this, we have to go with a different approach. And like, all those teams have been successful now, so it's pretty crazy to see.
Yeah, I mean, I agree definitely with the sentiment that, like, if, a top 20, top 25 team, it is sort of like, yeah, what do you expect? I think it's an interesting one because, yes, now that Valorant have announced their new format for next year, and also the fact that the selection process of the teams who are going to be in the, like, tier 1 portion of that format is going to be different from what we saw in, for example, the LCS, where the teams bought in for, 13 million, something like that. And so it's not actually going to be the teams who are buying the spots now. So basically Riot are going to be able to handpick who they want.
Okay.
So it is going to be a different selection process, and that's going to be interesting to find more out about. But because these first 2 years, and by the time the new format starts, it's going to be pretty much the first 3 years of the game's life cycle, hasn't been franchised, then yes, it has been a fight for everyone to get into those top spots, because even though your standing in VCT right now is not necessarily going to mean anything as for whether or not you get picked to be in the franchise league or, pseudo franchise league, the organizations involved in Valorant right now still need to make that money. Like they can't just have gone those 3 years or 2 years without making anything. So that's why there has been that real like dog eat dog sense, which comes from like this really ruthless of cutting of players and stuff like that you mentioned, because the only way to make money in Valorant is to be one of the top teams, really, because it's not other than for Champions team, there hasn't been any form of revenue share for people. So they need the visibility. And then of course, like having the visibility and making the content and proving that you're, a good org to your players is probably going to put you in a better standing with Riot and a higher likelihood of being involved with Valorant long term. And so I think there have been a lot of teams or a lot of orgs that have seen the potential longevity with Valorant and as a potentially good investment for the future. And they are trying to put themselves in the forefront so that they can be in that conversation. But it's obviously like rough for players who, don't see it from the business perspective. They are just like, I want to be one of the top players in Valorant. Like I need to be on a great team. I need to, whatever. And the development options that have been there have not necessarily been as conducive to players who are not decidedly at the very top to build. Because, think of obviously all the shit that happened with 100 Thieves. Players who are brought onto the team could have ended up being really good, but 100 Thieves couldn't afford to take that risk. That was ultimately like what happened, right? Because of the format. So I think while I don't necessarily feel that much for like teams who are in the the top 20 whatever and really hoping that they can get there, because I think that ultimately it's an investment from the org perspective. It is kind of, sad for the players who don't necessarily look at it through the lens of the business model that it's trying to be. And I do hope that the new format, I'm optimistic about the new format. I do hope that the new format is going to provide a lot more structure for players to really build. I guess the closest thing that we can really compare it to right now is maybe the format we have in like European League of Legends, where you have the kind of franchise top league and then you've got the ERLs. That's kind of what they're looking to implement in at least the top 2 tiers of this new format. But they want to do that in every region. And that's something, I actually wrote an article about this week. That's something that in the NA region, in basically any esport, hasn't been there. So in my opinion, implementing that kind of structure could actually be a huge fucking boon to a region that oftentimes has its sub tier 1 kind of neglected a little bit. I think that's been a real big problem for the LCS, and that's why you don't get a lot of native NA talent grow into the LCS, and it's all imports. So I think it's been a rough time. It's almost like the puberty of Valorant right now, which has meant things are shaky for teams who are not definitively in that, let's say, top 6 of their region, but with the new format and the structure that comes with it, hopefully that means that there is more structure supported lower than even just the top tier that is going to provide a lot more like clarity and stability for players and organizations alike.
Want to see more cool, funny, interesting clips based on topics from my content? Well, subscribe to this channel then, or, be a pleb and don't.